Okay, good luck.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Wednesday night poker program, 2009. I knew a very great poker player, a genius actually, who had this hint about playing in the new year. He said that if you're trying to make a profit at poker, playing in the casinos or in the card rooms, the worst time to play is at the very beginning of the new year, because everybody in one way or another makes resolutions on New Year's Eve, and everyone kind of promises to themselves that this year we won't be so stupid. So as long as people remember the resolutions a little bit, it makes them better poker players and it makes it harder to beat the games. So it's best to just take a break for at least a few weeks until everything comes back to normal. So with Zen, it works the opposite way. The very beginning of the new year is a particularly good time to practice Zen because we've all still got our resolutions, and as long as we've got some energy for that, we ought to make some use of it while we can. So for my intro talk, I want to say something about a movie I saw last year. A number of months ago, I rented from Netflix this little independent, low-budget film, a dark comedy entitled Zen Noir. So the title is a reference to a term that's used by movie critics, invented by, I guess, French movie critics decades ago to describe a certain type of movie that's been made since the late 30s. And there are a lot of different movies that fall into this category that they call film noir, but they all follow the same basic plot structure in broad strokes. It's always about your protagonist, your hero, who gets unintentionally and unwittingly drawn into a shadowy underground world and finds himself in the midst of danger and dreamlike confusion and problems that he can't possibly solve and moral ambiguity. The film noir can be about a lot of different things, but some of the most famous examples have been detective stories, starting with The Maltese Falcon, with Humphrey Bogart playing Sam Spade. More recent years, you had Chinatown in the 70s, where the detective was played by Jack Nicholson, right? So, anyway, the film that I saw was called Zen Noir, and what it did is it took these conventions and it followed all of the patterns of the famous film noir detective stories, but this underground world that the detective gets drawn into is the world of Buddhism. So it starts out in the typical way with the detective, a classical detective, kind of looking like Humphrey Bogart, getting that anonymous phone call telling him that there's been this death, and it's very mysterious, and it's very suspicious, and it's really vital that he goes out to investigate. So he rushes out to investigate, and it turns out that this death has been at a Buddhist temple, which he knows nothing about. So he barges into the Dharma room, where everyone is doing formal sitting, like we were just doing a few minutes ago, and the detective draws his gun, and he says, "Nobody move." And then he says, "Who's in charge here?" And everyone on the cushion turns around and points back at him. So that's the type of answer you usually get at a Zen center. The movie goes on with the detective interrogating the various members of the Zen center, and the arc of the plot is that as the movie goes on, this investigation that he had come to do of this particular death kind of widens, and he becomes more and more caught up in the bigger question of life and death itself. Up until you reach the climax, where he has, where he's alone with the Zen master, and by this point, his questions about life and death have gotten so burning in him that it comes out as his first question to the Zen master. So he says to him, "What happens after we die?" And watching this, I kind of get the idea that maybe the detective is still looking at Buddhism at this point like a religion. Coming into the Buddhist temple like this, it certainly looks like a religion, and that's what you expect to find at a religious place, that maybe you find a teacher, you find some scripture that will give you some ideas to answer your burning questions about life. Some idea that you could hold on to and make you feel a little bit better. But the Zen master didn't answer like that. The detective asked him, "What happens after we die?" And the Zen master said, "Don't know." And the detective wasn't very satisfied with that, so he says, "Why don't you know?" And the Zen master said, "Not dead yet." So I kind of like that interchange. That's kind of a little taste of the Zen style. He didn't give any type of idea to satisfy the detective's question. He just said something to point back to what we're actually experiencing in the moment. You may have all sorts of ideas about what's going to happen in the future. You may have all sorts of ideas about life and death. But all that we've really got is this moment, right now. You're alive or you're dead. Whatever you call it, this moment is all that we've got. I remember when I first started coming to this school, people would sometimes ask our Kani Zen master, questions about religion or about whether what we do is a religion, whether what we do here is a religion. And he said at least once or twice that we have to remember that there are two kinds of religion: outside religion and inside religion. And that's the way that I understood that outside religion is this whole realm of ideas, finding something in a book or hearing something from a teacher. And even if you hold it inside your own head, that's all outside religion. That's just some idea that comes from the outside. But the real point of what we do is the inside religion, which is pointing back to what is your experience at this moment. The scene from the movie was particularly interesting because it was very similar to something that happened the first time I spent some time with Dae-Sun-Sanim. Through a strange set of circumstances, we ended up on an airplane with me and Dae-Sun-Sanim and my old friend Sanim. And there was a guy across the aisle who was looking at us, particularly at them, because they were monks with the shaved heads and a gray robe. And this guy was obviously very curious what was going on, and he kept on trying to ask him questions to Dae-Sun-Sanim, who would just give him kind of short answers, until eventually Sanim stepped in and explained that he was a Zen master. So Sanim took out a pamphlet that he had from the Los Angeles Zen Center and gave it to this guy on the plane. So we started reading it, and it gave some of our basic teaching. It had on the front of it this poem that we use a lot. If you come on a Saturday to have a Dharma interview with Zen Expert Song, probably during the first year, you'll read this poem that begins, "Coming empty-handed, going empty-handed, that is human. When you were born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go?"